Today, we've got a little bit of everything. We've got a horrific bedside manner. We've got online dating. But most of all, we've got Va Bene. Living with Yourself After Show starts now.
I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, welcome to the Living with Yourself After Show. I'm Christian Bladt, joined once again by Lauren Hubbard, who is here with me to talk about episode 5. And there was some debate before the show as to how you say Va Bene. I feel like Kate said it Va Bene, but the other worker that was there, the person, looking at the plans, he might have said it a little differently. So let us know in the chat if I'm saying it wrong. Do you want to give it a try, Lauren?
Va Bene.
Okay, I like that. Ryan, any thoughts on Va Bene? Ryan in the booth, of course.
Va Bene.
Oh, I like that. All right.
I like that
I'm just going to say beignet because they're delicious, but we move on. All the same. I felt like there was a little bit of misdirect in the beginning of this episode because Kate's in the hospital and she's coming out from under anesthesia. The anesthesiologist, I believe, was
one of the doctors from the spa, right?
I thought it was one of the doctors from the spa.
I thought it was too.
And I was just like, oh, wait, she got a clone made?
That's exactly willingly. What I thought too, yes.
And so nicely done, by the way, that they made me think that that's what it was. Instead, we find out that it was 1,837 days BC before cloning. And that, unfortunately, that this was, I guess, one of Miles and Kate's first attempts to have a child, and she'd had a miscarriage. And the doctor in that scene, from a comedy standpoint, very funny. When you're trying to relate to these characters who you've started to care about over the past 4 episodes, you're like, oh my God, did she really just say that? What did you think of that doctor?
Oh, what? That was I know miscarriages are actually pretty common. But to talk to a brand new mother who has never gone through this before.
We're assuming it's her first miscarriage.
Right. Yeah. And, she's excited about the baby and then they find out they no longer have a baby. So for the doctor to be like, oh, it's actually not a tragedy.
Yeah.
You'll be okay. You'll bounce right back. And then Miles is like, okay, but can we have another child? Yeah, nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
So you could go.
It's like, she's like, it happens all the time. It's not the Hindenburg. It's like the first plane that Wilbur and Orville Wright tried to take off. Nobody even knows what it was called.
She was just so desensitized to it because it happened so often, but she didn't think about that specific couple in that moment.
Yeah, and I mean, they tried to basically, handle the situation as best as they could with a surprising amount of humor when the doctor is going through all of the things that, they have to refrain from. She talks about that they can't have vaginal sex, but oral and anal are okay. Kate has a great line. It's like my granny used to always say, if life gives you lemons, try anal. So I do like to highlight the really funny lines in the show because it is a funny show, but the drama sometimes is, this is such a sad moment, I mean, anybody who is a parent like myself probably experienced something like this as my wife and I did. And you're just like, oh, I can't imagine shrugging off a doctor being that terrible. But also you're just kind of stunned, like, she didn't just say that, did she? So I thought that it was nice to see not that, but sort of the way that they handle it in the time thereafter. Let's take a road trip. Oh, look at this house. You can see the interaction between Kate and Miles this 1,837 days earlier before the cloning was something different. What did you think watching these happier, younger versions of themselves interact?
Yes, you could see Miles was actually invested in the relationship, and he actually showed genuine feelings for Kate, and he wanted to make her happy, and it seems like he actually wanted to have a family with her. So I thought those earlier days were beautiful, and I was just like, gosh, well, what happened for you to become so miserable and not be invested in anything? But we later see as life goes on, what happens.
Yeah, and he researched that the schools were good in the place like that, and when we got our townhouse, my wife looked up where the schools were. She's much smarter than I am, so I could have used a clone version of myself to be a little bit better. But actually, this is original Miles. This is
original.
like this original Miles that you see, 1,800 days earlier. He might even be better than Clone Miles.
I think he was.
Yeah, he's just like, he's firing all cylinders. Like, I'm going to win a few more of those golden pencils. Everything's going to be fine. And obviously, that's not the case. But we saw something that I meant to reference in the previous episode. When Clone Miles is wandering around the house, you see a room that has sort of the yellow painting, and it had an elephant painted on the wall. I had seen that room in episode 4, and I meant to comment on it when we talked about it. That was clearly the baby's room, because you paint it yellow when you don't know if it's going to be a boy or a girl. Usually, that's usually why you go with yellow, because it's a little bit more of a neutral color. Both times we wanted to know, because we're like, no, we got to pick out colors. Sorry, it's just we need to know. We gotta pick out furniture. We gotta do you get a Spider-Man on the wall? Do you get a My Little Pony? So you got to figure all these things out. So I thought that this Miles was so sweet, and I liked this. This was the right time, I think, to have this flashback, because you can see how much they loved each other and what they saw in each other. But specifically, you do need to be reminded, like, what did Kate see in this guy?
Yeah, and you could see whenever Miles is painting, which we didn't know Miles could paint either. So he actually is creative. You could see the way Kate was looking at him. And she was really in love with him at that moment, because he genuinely cared, and she could see that.
Yeah.
And she even had a conversation with her assistant about, changing. She used to be a badass and a boss. And she was like, I love my life now.
Yeah, and she legitimately says it. And I thought that was a nice moment when we get the time jump, that you see her assistant / coworker pull up, and she's got the crossover SUV with the little family in the back, the little what do you call those little characters?
The kids.
Yeah, the little kids. Like, how many kids you have? They have at least 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really funny, that she's like, yeah, you're never gonna see me do that. And it's like, she's a minor character, but it was so fun that it's like, oh yeah, so you were criticizing Kate for selling out, and you were just able to sell out faster. So I thought that was funny. I liked her interaction, though, because we're getting to see Kate interact with somebody that's not Miles.
Yeah, right.
And I love that they stole the credenza, and why she always wanted it. I thought that these were nice touches. But let's talk about the gentleman whose house they're working on. The guy who has 99 problems, but a sink ain't one. I think this is actually a different guy than the guy we see later. Or is this? I don't even know. This is the same guy, right?
It's the same guy.
Yeah. So that was the note that I had, was the 99 problems, but a sink ain't one. Talk about showing up and having to work with somebody like that.
Well, I even wrote in my notes that he is an asshole.
You are correct. We could get a ding for that, Ryan.
All he wanted was, my CEO has this, and my CEO has those floors, and everything's great except the flooring. So they tell him, well, we're going to have to take out everything. All right, then do it. And it's just like, okay, you don't talk to us respectfully. Oh, when he answered the phone and said, I'm just chilling with some ladies.
Yeah, I know.
I was like, okay, you don't have any respect for your architects. You don't care about anyone but yourself.
Yeah.
And you want to be the CEO so badly.
Yes, which I think all builds up nicely to when we'll refer back to this later in the episode. We also see, this is the point where it's 2 days before cloning. And Kate is actually in a great mood, because she realizes she thinks she might be pregnant. And that's, you see how happy she is. And she's like, she doesn't want to tell Miles right then. She's trying to figure out his schedule. What she wants is a good time to know, like, oh, well, should I wait up for you? No, I'm doing work stuff. Okay, how about in the morning? Try not to be in one of your moods. And he's like, did you call me to start a fight? And she's like, no, I really want to talk about something good. And, it's hard to not feel for her, just sort of this resistance that all she wants to do is be so excited, and he just won't let her. So what did you feel for Kate there?
I did feel for Kate, because, she obviously has this exciting news, and he just is has the worst personality and attitude at this point. And it's kind of sad because I feel like that's how quite a few couples are, like in real life. You know, you start off in this happy honeymoon phase, and then as the years go by, like you said, it was 1,800 something days.
1,837
37 days.
Yeah.
So, you know, all that time has gone by. That's years. And people start to get less interested, less involved in the relationship. And unfortunately, he just is taking all his anger out on her.
Yeah.
Who has done nothing but be there for him.
And you do get the sense that he's not actually angry with her. It's something that they've touched on a couple times in these episodes. You know, he does say something horrible to her a little bit later in this episode that, you know, the getting cloned, this didn't have anything to do with you. And so you feel like there's something more that is wrong with him, but he is taking it out of there, taking it out on her. And yeah, look, I mean, a lot has changed since they moved into that house. And it seems like there's a lot of pressure on Miles. I think he's very, you know, we talked about this, Amy and I, in one of our first after shows. He's very, he's got no self-confidence. And I think that's a huge problem because maybe he had these ideas for the Hillston pitch somewhere in his head, but he wouldn't let himself find them because he's like, nah, that's stupid. You know, I think he's, you know, he wasn't finishing his play. He wasn't, you know, so I think he's stifling his, not even his creativity, just his expressing his thoughts because he just feels like he's not a good person, you know, and it's very sad, but you can't help but feel for Kate that that's how he's responding to it. And then unfortunately she realizes, nah, I'm actually not pregnant. So there's the one part of that, which is, I didn't tell him. So now she didn't tell him. So she doesn't get to tell him like, oh, well, now I'm actually sad and here's why, you know, so she doesn't get to share either of the emotions. So the whole thing, she's internalized it. And, you know, because Miles is being a jerk, I'm not faulting her for that. So you can just see that.
But a part of me feels like it's kind of better that way. I mean, that might have made him feel better too. And then for his hopes to be quickly taken away, that would have just made it even worse, I feel like.
Yeah, I think so. I think also he's such a, you know, nervous wreck because this is at the point where, you know, he's about to clone himself. He hasn't quite gotten there yet. But yeah, we see the real difference. You know, you were talking about over the course of time, the different way that they wake up when they first live in the house. Like, let's go running on grass because we're out in the country and it's so exciting. And just like the routine of just the drudgery of waking up and just like, yeah. This
kind of reminds me of, what is it, 365 Days of Summer?
500 Days of Summer.
500 Days.
Yeah, and how that jumps around.
I said the year. That's a year.
Well, that's a whole year. You know, that's still a long summer. Yeah, look, and it's just like, yeah, you just, you know, things change, different pressures, and you need to find that spot. Look, it's not always easy. I've been married for 10 years. It's not always easy to find how it is. And, you know, I think that if you don't address, as Miles, if you don't address what the problem is that you have with yourself, there's no way that you're going to be able to make another person happy. So I can see why he's, you know, you're starting to understand, like, yeah, $50,000 is a lot of money, but if this is going to fix everything, let me just go and actually do this, I thought. So we see her disgusted with Miles in a lot of ways and the whole situation. So she does fill out this online dating profile. And we see that she is very popular because she's a woman on an online dating profile. My understanding.
Dater. It's called
Yeah,
Dater.
with an 8. I know. I like that. I was just like, hey, that's a good name. They should have trademarked it and then started it for real, not just used it on this show. Date her. And, her messages are popping up. Her DMs are on fire. But
And Miles doesn't even know.
he has no idea.
It's not, he's there eating, but he's so not present with her, it doesn't faze him.
Yeah, no. It's just like, oh, you're getting a lot of texts. Anything going on? No. He just, you know, here's the thing in the background. We see scenes that we saw from the first episode. She's in the shower. Where are the light bulbs? And, you know, just all these texts going on the whole time. And at this point, she's still like deleting all of them. She's like, no, I don't know. I don't know what I'm thinking. I can't jump right into this. So I think that you get the sense that she's like, I don't know. I don't know that I want to do anything with this. And we fill in a blank from I guess that's the second episode. Yeah, because it's the second episode where she comes home and he's made dinner from the farm. That's when we realized, how the farmer knew who he was. And again, even this being clone Miles, better Miles, he's not thinking anything that she could possibly have any doubts. So she asks, which to me would be a very suspicious question. You haven't been reading my emails, have you? If someone you're involved with asks you that question, are you going to let that go and then talk about your trip to the farm?
Nope. I'm going to be like, why? What's in your emails that I don't need to be reading?
Let me see your emails right now, or are you afraid for me to see something, So, I was just like, oh, yeah, you just, again, Clone Miles is maybe like a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. Original Miles is about a 4. So he's not super sharp. He really didn't pick up on that. He doesn't know that there's trouble. And I think it's really interesting that we're seeing sort of the way that this is all impacting Kate. And we see how that party that they had at the house where Clone Miles filled in for Original Miles, and he was very charming and everybody had a great time. And then we also see the aftermath of the work party and how she stormed off after talking to them. This is when we get to a moment we didn't see before. She asks Original Miles something that you and I talked about when we reviewed episode 4. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me that this had been going on for this long? And he does say the terrible thing that I referenced earlier, because it had nothing to do with you. And I don't think that's true. Do you think first of all, what do you think of him saying that? And do you think that's accurate? That has nothing to do with her?
I wouldn't say nothing, but I feel like a large part of it was just for himself. I feel like he was genuinely unhappy with himself. And yes, she's a huge part of his life, but he was just so down and depressed with the way his life was going that I feel like it was more for himself than anyone else. I do feel like that.
Yeah, no, I do think so. But I think, maybe a Miles who is a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10 would realize, like, oh, you shouldn't say that, even if it's true. You don't say to women, it had nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
So, this is when we see, there was kind of a blip where she's like, oh, you know what, Miles is great. And then she's like, oh, Clone Miles is great. My Miles is still a jerk. And so you see her getting kind of furious. So she decides she's going to go to the fertility clinic, and she's like, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and, you know what? It's fine. If my husband's not going to test his levels, we'll just get somebody else's sperm. And like, let's just get this started. And then she realizes she doesn't have money.
So money.
And I believe, in fact, I know for a fact, Miles said, I don't know what that, low balance alert was all about. What do you think, but in that moment, if you're Kate, that you've been lied to, and then on top of that, you found out another lie within the lie about the money?
Ooh, I would be furious. I would want to literally hurt him, but at the same time, was I robbed? Like, did Clone Miles rob me? Because I know my husband didn't do that too. Like, she found out 2 lies. But at the same time, I know he did do her wrong. But I was like, you're doing him wrong by just going, you're going to get someone else's sperm?
Yeah.
So I feel like they were both wrong in that instance.
Yeah, no, I think so. But I think she definitely feels justified in being angry. And she doesn't give them the $5,000 because she doesn't have it. But then that brings us to our Va Bene moment where she's just listening to this guy and she totally tells him off. And it's just like, look, what are you, 50? You're never going to be the new CEO. You're never going to be as young. And she's basically venting all of her anger at Miles at this guy who does have a funny line. He just says to the other guy, I'm 48. But what do you think you've seen through the end. So I'm going to just instead give my prediction. I think that he's not going to be put off by that, and he's going to like the fact that she stood up and stated her opinion. Now, you can't tell me if I'm right or wrong.
I'm not.
But we'll see when we review episode 6. So, I remembered that you've watched to the end of the show. So we finally wind things down in this episode where she's actually starting to look at the responses that she got on the dating app, on Dater. And they're awful, as terrible as you would expect. Again, I've been with my now wife for 15 years. So online dating and these apps were never part of my life. But from when I talk to people for who they have been, it seemed to be kind of par for the course. You know, whether it's a dating app or people reach out to you on social media, it's all a lot of this stuff, you know, is what it seemed like she was getting. But then one catches her eye. And what did you think she might have seen there when she lit up about one of them that she was reading, one of the responses?
Well, I already knew who it was because of episode 4.
Yeah.
But I was really disappointed in her because of how mad she was at the original Miles. So why would you go and flirt with clone Miles? And I get that she is unhappy in her relationship. She's upset about everything that goes on. But does that really give you the right to cheat?
From her point of view, I guess so. And what I would say is that the message that she saw must have been amazing, because think about this. Miles knows what she likes. She knows what she likes to hear. And this is a better version of Miles. So he could use those powers for evil and woo over the wife of the original version of him. And I found it interesting because I was talking to my wife about this show because she's only watched a couple of them. And I'm surprised at so many turns with things that the show does that I didn't expect. I didn't realize that she was going to walk into that restaurant and know that Clone Miles was there. I thought she was going to maybe be surprised and like, oh, wait, I'm meeting with you. You know, so I didn't know. I thought that maybe he could have faked the whole thing. So she's all in on this. And apparently you weren't surprised because you were shaking your head like, what are you, an idiot? Kind of. Totally, kind of. I mean, I'm probably at like a 3.5. I'm not even as good on the scale of 1 to 10 as original Miles. But so you weren't surprised at all?
Not at all.
All right. Well, I was, and I'm really looking forward to episode 6, which we will review tomorrow. Although, Lauren, you will not be here. You will not be back for the rest of the series.
I won't.
So we're going to miss you, but I'm glad we've had this chance to talk about the show. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Lauren the Truth, and check out my website, lauren-patricia.com.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And Wednesdays or Thursdays, depending, we do the South Park After Show here at AfterBuzz TV. So just look for that. I'll tweet out links at ChristianDMZ. That's all the time we have for now, but we'll be back tomorrow to talk about episode 6. See you then.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.